Hey, it's Sam, and today on Sugar Spun Run, we are going to be making a turtle cheesecake. So about a week and a half ago, I got an email from one of you asking me if I could make my own version of a turtle cheesecake. I set to work, and about 15-20 bricks of cream cheese later, I have a version I'm really excited about. It incorporates chocolate and caramel and cheesecake, and of course, lots of toasty pecans really well. So let's just go ahead and jump right into it. First thing you want to do, get your oven preheating to 325 degrees Fahrenheit. Make sure you have a rack in the center of your oven because that's the one we'll be baking our cheesecake on. So we'll start with our graham cracker crust, which is pretty standard, but I have thrown in a couple of extras to make this suit the cheesecake better. We start with 1.5 cups of graham cracker crumbs. And the next thing you're going to need is 1/3 cup of pecan halves, and we are going to break these into teeny tiny pieces. Bonus points if your pecans are toasted. It's not a must for this recipe, but toasted pecans really do just have a better flavor. Now I'm just going to drop these in a Ziploc bag and make really quick work of breaking them up by just smashing them a couple times with the back of a spoon. More than a couple times. Also a great way to get out any anger or frustration you may have. I don't really have any now, but good to know for the future. You can see we have fine pieces here. We'll just drop these in with our crumbs. And we are also going to be adding 3 tablespoons of firmly packed light brown sugar. A lot of times I will do a mix of brown sugar and white sugar, but for today's recipe, I wanted that extra depth of flavor from the brown sugar. Next, you'll need 7 tablespoons of melted butter. I am using salted butter today. Pour that right in. And no butter left behind on my watch. We do not waste butter around here. Now I'm just going to toss these ingredients together until all of the dry bits are moistened by the butter. Today's recipe is going to be made in a 9-inch springform pan. You really do need a springform pan when you're making cheesecake. I have a couple I like. I will make sure to link to them in the description so that if you don't have one, you know where to find one. And it can be tricky to get a good springform pan. Sometimes they just leak, which is the worst. Just pour our crumbs right in the bottom there. All of our crumbs. And then the easiest way to press the crust into the pan, I like to just use a glass that's straight up and down, or you could use a measuring cup. We're just going to tamp that into the bottom and up the sides of the pan. You do want to go pretty high up the sides because at the risk of sounding like a broken record, if you've watched my other cheesecake recipes, pushing that crust up high is key to keeping our cheesecakes from cracking. This is because it keeps the cheesecake from baking to the side of the pan so that when the cheesecake naturally shrinks a little bit as it cools, the crust will shrink with it. There's no tension, no cracks. Now, if you can't get your crust up the side as high as you would like, I will include some other tips to help prevent cracking and show you what to do when your cheesecake comes out of the oven in that instance. If you've been watching my videos for a while, you also know I do not use a water bath with my cheesecakes. And yet, despite that, I'm going to show you how you can also have a beautiful, creamy, smooth cheesecake with no cracks on top. It's very doable. All right, beautiful. We're going to set this aside. You do not need to bake the crust in advance or anything like that. Just let it sit. And we will begin to prepare the other components of our cheesecake. Now, I like to start by making the chocolate ripple, or it's really a chocolate ganache that we're going to be using in the center. You're going to need 2 ounces of either finely chopped chocolate, or this is couverture chocolate. We are going to add 1/4 cup of heavy cream to this, and I am just going to pop it in the microwave for like 25 seconds. Give everything a nice whisk, and you want to whisk until that chocolate is completely melted and your mixture is smooth. 25 seconds should do it, but if for any reason yours isn't melted and smooth after some whisking, because you will need to whisk it, just pop it in the microwave in 5 to 8 second intervals and keep whisking in between until it is nice and smooth. It's kind of a cheater's way of making ganache. All right, we're going to set this aside so that it can cool. And you'll want to grab a large mixing bowl for your cheesecake batter. For today's recipe, you'll need 24 ounces of softened cream cheese. I do recommend using the brick style cream cheese. Do not use the kind sold in tubs that has additives. Your cheesecake is not going to bake up properly if you use those, unfortunately. It is important that your cream cheese be very soft, otherwise you could end up with a lumpy cheesecake. All right, you know our rule for butter. The same thing applies for cream cheese. We're not wasting any. Now with the cream cheese, we're going to add 3/4 cup of granulated sugar, and we're also going to add 1/4 cup of firmly packed light brown sugar. Brown sugar is making another appearance here because it really does add a subtle but very appropriate flavorful undertone to this cheesecake. Now, today's recipe could absolutely be made in your stand mixer using a paddle attachment. However, I'm going to be using my electric mixer instead today. Now we'll cream these ingredients together until everything is smooth and lump-free. If you are using a stand mixer, make sure you pause periodically to scrape the sides and bottom of the bowl. That's a good habit to do even if you're using an electric mixer. It just seems that things are more likely to stick to the bottom and sides if you are using a stand mixer instead. Now you don't want to overdo it. You don't want to whip too much air into the cheesecake. So I'm keeping my mixer speed pretty low. And it's important everything be smooth and lump free, but I don't really keep mixing it beyond that. Here we'll do our scrape. And next we will add our sour cream. This is a 1/2 cup of sour cream, full fat sour cream. You could substitute full fat plain Greek yogurt instead. I really love using sour cream in my cheesecakes because it's huge for depth of flavor. If you don't use it, you end up with a too sweet, almost shallow tasting cheesecake. So don't skip the sour cream. We'll also be adding 3/4 teaspoon of vanilla extract. Now we'll stir everything together again until our ingredients are well combined. All right, now let's talk about our eggs for a second before we add them to our batter. You're going to need 3 eggs for today's recipe, 3 large eggs. And there are a couple things I want to mention because just like using cold cream cheese can ruin the final texture of your cheesecake, not getting things right with the eggs is probably the part where most people go wrong when making a cheesecake. So these eggs should be at room temperature. If yours are not, just put them in a bowl of warm water for 15 minutes. That will bring them to room temperature for you. And we're going to add the eggs one at a time. It's not necessary that your eggs be blue or green like mine are, but I wanted to pick the prettiest one for camera. So I always crack the eggs in a separate dish. This is helpful, of course, in case you were to accidentally crack a bad egg or in case you were to get any shell in there. It's much easier to retrieve. But I do it in a separate dish because then I can lightly scramble that egg, which gives it a head start. Now I'm going to add it to my batter, and you do want to add your eggs just one at a time. There's our first one. And I'm going to stir it on low speed just until it's combined. That looks pretty good, so we'll go into our next one. Now, this is important because if you overmix the eggs, you can end up with a sort of crumbly, dry, almost curdled texture to your cheesecake. And obviously we want our cheesecake to be creamy and smooth. So we give them a head start by mixing them together in a separate dish, and then we add them one at a time so we can make sure that they are completely incorporated, and we keep our speed on low so that we don't have to worry about whipping in too much air. I only had 1 green egg to use today. Add our last one. Let's do a final scrape of the sides and bottom of the bowl. You want to make sure this is lump free, nothing hiding anywhere in the bowl. All right, let's grab our crust. And for this cheesecake, I wanted to have ribbons of chocolate and ribbons of caramel. So we're going to assemble it in 3 parts. We're going to pour about 1/3 of the cheesecake into the bottom of the pan. It's okay if this isn't exact. Mine rarely is exact. And I just use my spatula to smooth that a little bit. Looks like I could do a little more. Now let's grab our ganache from earlier. Give it a little whisk to make it smooth. Oh, and I like to take about half of it and swirl it, or I should say drizzle it over the cheesecake. Not all of it yet. You're also going to need caramel for today's recipe. For the middle of the cheesecake, you're going to need only 1/4 cup. We'll need more for the topping later. And you can buy a store-bought caramel topping, or you can use my recipe that I recently shared over on the blog. I haven't yet made a video of it, but I have an easy recipe for homemade caramel topping. We're going to drizzle this. Try not to drizzle it right on top of the chocolate because then you are less likely to be able to see it when you cut into the cheesecake, and I wanted to be able to see it. If you'd like, use a butter knife to just swirl it a little bit. Don't do it too much. It's so pretty, but we're going to be covering it up in a second, so that doesn't matter. This just helps evenly distribute the chocolate and caramel through the cheesecake. So now we're going to do another layer of our cheesecake batter. And try to pour it kind of slowly because it's going to disturb that bottom layer. Again, that's not a big deal, but it's just gonna make it a little bit easier for you if you're just kind of gentle with it. Just nudge that over the edges. And then I take some more of my chocolate, do the same thing. And another 2 tablespoons of caramel because we did 2 tablespoons in the first layer, 2 tablespoons here. And this is gonna give us a nice, beautiful ribbon of caramel throughout. That way you have all of those turtle flavors in every bite of your cheesecake. And again, that's really pretty when we do that, but it doesn't really matter because we're going to be covering everything anyway. Final layer of cheesecake batter. And don't worry if all of the chocolate and caramel aren't covered, it doesn't matter. Just do your best. And don't stress about it because seriously, this is not a big deal. So long as you get those ribbons somewhere in the cheesecake, you're going to have all of those flavors in the end result. Okay, we'll take this over to our preheated oven where it's going to need to bake for about 50 minutes. Now, when the cheesecake is finished baking, you may have noticed that the edges have puffed slightly. If yours haven't, that's fine too. And when you jiggle the cheesecake, you'll notice the edges are set, but the center will still be a little bit jiggly, sort of like Jell-O. Here's how mine looks. This is what you're looking for. Now, if you didn't put your crust up high enough and any of your cheesecake is sticking to the pan, just take a sharp knife. Remember the pan is hot, so be careful, don't touch it, but use that knife to just gently loosen the cheesecake from the side of the pan. Now we're going to let the cheesecake cool at room temperature until it's no longer warm to the touch, and then pop it in the fridge where it will need to cool for at least 6 hours, preferably overnight, before we can decorate it. Now you will have to wait for your cheesecake to cool before you do the topping. I do have a cheesecake I prepped last night, so we are going to go ahead and decorate this one now. We're going to make some more chocolate for the topping. I have more Couverture chocolate here. This is 1 ounce. Again, we'll add some cream to that. And this is a smaller amount, so I'm going to pop it in the microwave for about 18 seconds. Somewhere between 15 and 20. And we'll whisk this together. So you have a nice, beautiful, smooth ganache for the topping. All right, I'm going to take my caramel topping and I'm going to spoon a 1/3 cup of this over the cheesecake. And I like to have a nice layer of caramel on top. This caramel smells amazing. And it's really so easy to make, just so long as you have a candy thermometer. I take that mostly to the edge, and then I take my chocolate and do a nice little drizzle over the cheesecake. Here you can do a nice little swirl if you'd like. We are going to be covering a lot of this with pecans, but it's not going to hurt to try to make it pretty. I'm looking at that on camera and it does not look as pretty as it does in real life, so I'm not sure why that didn't translate. Let's go ahead and cover it with some pecans. You'll need 3/4 cup of pecan halves for today's recipe. Again, toasted pecans, you get bonus points if you use those. Now I like to do a mix of halves and like crumbled bits of pecans, so I'll just kind of place some around the cheesecake. Then I'll also take some and just kind of break them up. Because the little bits of broken pecans just kind of look pretty, and also it's going to make it easier to cut the cheesecake because it's not exactly easy to cut through the pecans. Okay, final touch. We have a little bit of chocolate remaining. I like to just drizzle that on top, kind of haphazardly. You could also do this with the caramel if you'd like, but I think this is plenty of caramel, so I don't usually add more. So you have 2 options now. You can pop this in the fridge, let the caramel and the chocolate solidify a little bit so that it's a little bit neater to cut, or you can just throw all of your patience to the wind and you can dig into it right now. And guess which one I'm gonna do? We're not patient around here. Yes, this is going to be a little bit messy, but it's going to be delicious. When I made this last night, I was in a rush and I poured my caramel and my chocolate into my layers and I didn't swirl them. So I'm expecting the inside's not going to be as pretty as it could be, but we should still have a nice distribution, hopefully. Oh yeah. Take a look at that. We have our creamy cheesecake, and please do admire how creamy and beautiful that cheesecake is because you worked hard for that. You followed all the steps. You should have that perfect texture. We've got our ripples of chocolate, caramel. Looks like it's kind of hard to see that on camera. Maybe you can see it a little bit better here, but we have all of our turtle flavors all tucked into a golden pecan graham cracker crust. I'm really, really excited for you to try this one. I want to thank all of you who send your requests to me. I always love having something new to try. And if you try this at home, please leave me a comment. Let me know what you think. I really do always love hearing from you. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you next time. All right, Luke, are you ready for this? Look at that caramel. You see that caramel in the middle? Look at that. See that? Doesn't that look good?
Yeah.
Cheers. What do you think? You going for another bite? Yeah, me too. Just don't have enough rage in me today. There's no way I can assemble this holding you though. We'll just, whoa! Thanks for stopping by. If you'd like, use a cheesecake to just sort of use a cheesecake.
Egg!
Egg.
Hi, I'll take the chocolate bite.
Smart boy.